What's up, WBB fans? I am James, and this is another episode of Inside the Cylinder, your home for everything women's basketball. Welcome back, y'all. How's everybody doing out there in WBB land? We are back with another episode, and today we have to talk about the coaching carousel. This is the most unprecedented number of firings we have ever seen. I keep making allusions to Game of Thrones. You think you know the cast, and then they're gone. And that is what the WNBA feels like right now. We're going to talk about everything that goes into that as I see it. We're going to talk about the positions themselves, which are the most attractive, which coaches have an inside track, and also the macro of why this all seems to be happening right now and what can we kind of glean from what that means going forward. So we got a lot to unpack. As always, grab a soda, grab a chair, let's get it popping. So to get this started, let's take it back only 5.5 weeks ago, September 24th, the Los Angeles Sparks say, "Thanks for the service, Kurt Miller. We'll see you when we see you." That was the first domino to fall. And I think a lot of people were surprised by that specific firing, not so much myself. We talked about it on the podcast. He was 25-55 in 2 years. Yes, it was a rebuild, but the way that Los Angeles was trending with Cameron Brink, with Rickea Jackson, with potentially Paige Beckers, I really just think that the Los Angeles management wanted a fresh new face, someone they think that could cultivate this young talent, maybe not this established guy who has kind of always had ready-made teams. He's had teams that were built largely in part with veterans through free agency, and this is kind of a more of a ground buildup. That's what I took from it. I was not surprised. I liked the move. A lot of people didn't like the move. But then the real bombshell hit. And of course, I'm talking about Teresa Weatherspoon being let go after one season in Chicago. And I really think we can trace really a lot of these other firings back to this firing. I really think this was the real domino that the other ownership groups and front offices were like, hey, if we're going to do it, let's do it now. I'll talk about that later in kind of the, what to expect moving forward with the new WNBA. But this one was a shocker, including myself included. I want to talk about Chicago specifically for a moment, not only because I think they in particular have absolutely butchered this offseason, but it's also emblematic of the scrambling that we are seeing within the WNBA front offices, okay? Now, it's funny because throughout the year, I was really singing the praises of new general manager Jeff Pagliacca. I thought he did an unbelievable job, not only with the trade of Kalia Copper, he got Onyewenye, he got Turner, he got the pick that turned into Cardoso, he got a 26 firster. He drafted Angel Reese. He found Kennedy Carter, which was probably the signing of the free agency period. So this guy was really building the groundwork. And it was looking like, okay, we're going to build some assets. We got the front court. We pair it with some guards. He traded Mabry, which I thought was a great trade because you're just building once again. You're not going anywhere with her. But now that I see that Latricia Trammell is the the leading candidate for this job, I realize this guy had absolutely no plan when he fired Teaspoon. And the reason I know this is because if Latricia Trammell, who was previously not available, is your leading candidate, that means one of two things. Either you had candidates that you thought you were going to land that rejected you, which is basically like having no plan at all, or you just knew you did not want this to be your head coach. And I think that is what we're really dealing with. I think we're dealing with the GM that was hired after a head coach and whether this was a disagreement about personnel, culture, scheme, it was never going to happen. I am of the belief that Teaspoon could have made the playoffs and she was still going to get fired. I just think there's no way around it. Especially considering Pagliacca is now going to hire a recently fired coach. Like if he came with like some analytics person from the NBA, or he had the inside beat on like Tyler Marsh from Las Vegas or Katie Smith from Minnesota, and he was just waiting for them to wrap up their seasons and then make the announcement, here's our new person. Everybody get excited. Then it would be a different story. Then at least, whether or not you agree with the firing, then at least this guy had a plan, right? But honestly, the way I see it now is they probably don't even love Latricia Trammell. They probably don't love Kurt Miller. They probably don't love Christy Sides. But now they're in a situation, because what I think was a rash decision to just get rid of Spoon when they did, especially without like an absolute certain lead candidate, is that now you run the risk, if those coaches who had just been fired don't want to come coach for you, and now you're going to have to go down the list and find a first-year assistant that basically no one's ever heard of, that was on no candidates list, and then you have to sell that to your fan base. You have to sell that to your players. You have to sell that to potential free agents looking at Chicago in the offseason as, oh yeah, we fired Spoon because we had this no-name coach waiting in the wings. That is going to be a real problem, okay? Which is why I think they're going full court press for somebody like Latricia Trammell, who they can kind of get behind and say, hey, you know what? As soon as she became available, we knew we had to have her. We couldn't, the PR storm for, oh my goodness gracious, we got lucky because this is a coach that doesn't come around often. That's what you're going to hear. And they're going to overpay for one of these retreads. I promise you that. Because I'm telling you folks, they cannot afford for the music to stop and not have a chair, because that is going to look terrible. It's going to look terrible, obviously, like I said, to free agents and players, but it's also just a bad look. You fire Spoon, and then what? You hire somebody that nobody's ever heard of because no one is looking to take this gig. So once again, I anticipate one of these retreads landing in Chicago for a much higher price than they would go for at any other destination. And while I know I just got totally derailed on Chicago and the mess that I think they are, we move on. I know that's only the second coach that got fired. And then Tanisha Wright gets fired. Okay. And I think that was one that kind of everybody expected. They really just did not meet expectations in any way, shape, or form. It's also very instructive with what we're not going to see going forward, because Tanisha Wright was given a 5-year contract extension, which good for her. She's going to get a bag on the way out the door to kind of kick those feet up or go be an assistant somewhere. She's going to do a little double dip action. But you're not going to see that anymore in the new WNBA. The only way you're going to see like 5-year extensions after 1 or 2 years is if a coach wins a title, or they are just so sought after and so acclaimed that you need to do that in order to secure them. First of all, that was a terrible 5-year extension. I understand at the moment why they did it. And also you can't kind of read the tea leaves at that point and realize how much the WNBA is going to change in the next 24 to 48 months. But they did the right thing. They need a new, fresh start. I personally love the aforementioned Tyler Marsh for this spot, the guard whisperer. You have Ryan Howard, who I think has a ton of untapped potential. She didn't really get that tutelage from Tanisha Wright. I wholeheartedly think that Marsh is Atlanta's guy, but I also think Marsh's agent, his people, himself are waiting for November 17th, which is a very key date because that is the draft lottery, okay? And I think he is waiting specifically to see if Los Angeles can pull that number one selection. Obviously, that would mean Paige Beckers. That would be the backcourt in Los Angeles to pair up with Rickea Jackson and Cameron Brink. So if you have that trio, that is obviously extremely tempting. And I think that is what he's waiting for. Once again, I'd be nervous if I was Atlanta. Now, there are other candidates there too. I think Katie Smith is getting a lot of juice after this unbelievable season Minnesota had. But for me, I think a lot of people are talking about the head coaches that have recently been fired. I think Tyler Marsh could have any job he wanted. That's what I think. I think he's ready. I think you've seen the player development in Las Vegas. And I think he's going to head up either Atlanta or Los Angeles. The fourth coach to be let go, we've talked about her a little bit in that Chicago role, LT, Latricia Trammell. Dallas, this was a little bit interesting too. Not completely shocked by it, but I think she was a byproduct of expectation, okay? They had a really solid finish to 2023. They actually had a very competitive series against Las Vegas. Frankly, that was almost as competitive as the New York Championship Series. So I think a lot of expectations were coming into 2024. And frankly, I don't think those expectations were realistic. Satu Sabali was always going to be out for that first half of the season. To think you're going to take away a top 15 or 20 player from a 22-win team and then be anywhere near that good, I think that was just poor forecasting by the media, fans, what have you. But obviously they failed a little bit even more miserably than I thought. I thought they were a fringe playoff team. I thought they were no better than 8th. That's where we had them to start the season, and they quickly dropped, and they just never got it together. They're a really interesting team. I think they're also in that total rebuild phase. I think it's pretty clear Satu probably is not going to be there long term. So fully expect them to core her and then try to work out a deal. Unlike the Elena Deladon situation, I think Satu would be happy playing with several teams. Obviously, she would be totally fine going to New York, play with her sister. I think she's an LA girl. I think she likes Los Angeles. And I mean, that would be, if you could get a Cameron Brink, Rickea Jackson, Satu Sabali, Paige Beckers crew, that would be nasty. Indiana's been thrown around. I think she would go several places. And I think then Dallas could also start stockpiling for their future. And remember, they have a 45% chance to land that number 1 overall pick also. And if not, then you have, Kiki Iriafen as that nice consolation prize for either team in that second spot. It remains to be seen what the direction of this franchise is. I think it's pretty clear now, and I was saying this as somebody who loves Arike. It's clear Arike cannot be your number 1 option on a championship team. And that's no shade. There's only a few players that actually can be the case for. But I think you need to start building that team with those kind of thoughts in mind. I'll be interested to see if Awak Kawir comes back. I'll be interested to see if late their number 1 draft pick from a year comes over. Now she's French. Sometimes that doesn't always translate, but Dallas is in flux. I feel bad for Dallas. I think they got a long road ahead of them. The good news is they do have some equity. They do have some capital. And I think they're going to get even more with Satu Sabali. I don't really know as far as coaching. I don't know. This is the one that I'm kind of like left in the dark with who they might be going after. This might be where Kurt Miller ends up because they just feel like, hey, he can kind of bridge a gap while we build, and maybe there'll be more options in 27 and 28. So that's where we're at with Dallas. Eric Tebow, in another surprising firing, was the next one to go. This one was very interesting because his dad got the heave-ho too, and that might have been a situation where he wasn't going to fire his son. And so he said, if he goes, I go. And they said, thanks for the service. I think a lot of people were miffed by this, upset by this. It makes sense to me, once again, from 30,000 feet, watching how hard they were playing at the end of the season. I think there was kind of a question of like, wait a second, don't they want to lose some of these games here? They want to build up that draft equity. They want to get higher picks. But I think that tells us this was kind of a 1 year, you got one more year to prove it. Let's see what you can do. Maybe it was you get into the playoffs, we'll retain you. If not, we're going to go a different direction. Another team, I've talked about this team. I think this team is definitely probably one of the youngest nucleus. It'll be really interesting to see who they protect. Obviously, there are some people, they're going to protect Shakira. Obviously, they're going to protect Sykes, Atkins. They're going to protect Aaliyah Edwards. And then I think they're going to protect Engsler. And bold take, I think they're going to protect Jade Melbourne. I think they're going to say, hey, Golden State Valkyries, if you want to take Steph Dolson, if you want to take her $170,000 contract off our hands, headed into a new CBA, be our guest. Because I don't think Washington is anywhere near contention, okay? Even at their absolute best, they're probably in that 5, 6, 7 range at their absolute best. But you add 2 first-round draft picks this year, you add some more maturation for those younger players, and then we're talking in the 26-27 season. Like a lot of these teams, what the common theme is, hey, we're building. Let's get a new voice. Let's get a new culture. Let's get everything brand new, and we can build towards that, headed into this new CBA, headed into this expanded league, which will be 13 next year, 15 in 26, probably 16 in 27. So Eric Tebow, his dad, they're gone. That one is going to be interesting. I think Christy Tolliver is kind of the name you're hearing a lot. I could definitely see that. I could definitely see her getting a gig. So I'll be very interested. Generally, Washington makes some good moves, but they had a really bad offseason last year with the Elena Deladon. Another situation. If they can get anything for her contract, I think you must. Because she's 35, will be 36 in next season. Get something if you can. And once again, you're just building assets. That's what you're going to have to do. And then, of course, the last 2 coaches to be fired, they go hand in hand because there was some sneaky, tricky stuff going on. Of course, I'm talking about Christy Sides out in Indiana, followed by Stephanie White out in Connecticut. Let's go in order here. It was widely reported and speculated that while Christy Sides was still employed as the head coach in Indiana, they were having conversations with Stephanie White. So obviously, I don't even know how they're allowed to do that. Stephanie White's under contract for another year, or was under contract for another year. I don't know how that's not tampering or against the rules. I don't know what the CBA says for that, but that sounded real tricky. Obviously, also, it's just regardless or not, if it's going to make your team better, it's a really bad look. It's a really bad look in the sense of how you do business. You want to maintain a level of professionalism, and I understand things like this do happen behind the scenes, but you better make dang sure they stay behind the scenes, because when it comes out, it just looks second class. It does not look good. It looks very Bush League. Christy Sides took it like a champ, right on the chin. She's got to be feeling some type of way, that's for sure. Oh my goodness. But she's out. And then obviously Connecticut and Stephanie White part ways. I don't really understand what Connecticut's thinking was, what Darius Taylor, the GM, was thinking. Maybe they worked out some agreement. Either way, it definitely seemed like the writing was on the wall. If not this year, the next year. So they just probably pulled that Band-Aid off. Maybe they've had talks with Alyssa Thomas, DeWanna Bonner, Brianna Jones, three of their big free agents, unrestricted free agents. And maybe it's just like, let's tear this baby down to the studs. We gave it a college try getting Mabry at the trade deadline. We did our best, but now it's rebuild time, which Mabry, man, you got a solid month and a half of competitive basketball, and it's right back. No, I mean, that's not true yet. I mean, let's see what they do, but I don't know. It feels like this is a let's rebuild it. I don't know who they have targeted. I thought January was going to be the next in line, but she just signed an assistant contract for the Motor City Cruise, which is the G League affiliate of the Pistons. So I don't know if they had talked to her before and said, hey, we love you, we're not giving you this head coaching job. That was a little weird. I'm pretty sure she would have taken the Connecticut Sun head coaching job over this Motor City assistant job, but maybe not. I don't know. I don't know where Connecticut's heads are at. I'm going to be fascinated. They're kind of going that Dallas bucket where I'm going to be very interested to see who they go with moving forward. Obviously, back to the Indiana piece. I think obviously it's Steph White. I think the footsies is just the precursor. I can't imagine it's going to take too long to sign that contract. But that also begs the question of, are they just going to go all in the season before the new CBA? Are they going to just say, hey, we'll give a bunch of future assets to try to get Caitlin Clark the best kind of supporting cast she can get in order to make a push? And obviously I'm talking about Satu Sabali. I did a video on YouTube about, I think that would cost at least 2 first-round picks. I think they'd have to give up Lexi Hall and maybe even somebody else. People did not like that, by the way, which, side note, let me just diatribe real quick. I think Lexi Hall has improved immensely. I think she was much maligned by people that didn't really see her skill set for what it was. And now she's within an offense and with a player like Caitlin Clark where she can really shine, right? She's always going to be the 4th or 5th or 6th option. But if she can knock down those 3-point shots, she's going to be valuable. And she plays great on-ball defense. That said, just to be clear for anybody who has just started watching, there is no planet where Indiana wouldn't gladly pack Lexi's bags if they can get Satu Sabali. Satu Sabali was a first-team All-WNBA player at 25 years old in 2023. This player is going to be a top 15 player in the league for the next 5 to 7 years, okay? If you want Caitlin Clark to have the best chance to win, I'm telling you right now, that's with Satu Sabali, even if that means you got to give up Lexi Hall. So that's where we're at with the coaching carousel. 7 coaches relieved of their duties. Frankly, I thought Noelle Quinn might have been on the chopping block as well. But I think after a reassessment, by the way, Noelle, if you end up getting fired in the next 20 minutes, I'm sorry for jinxing you. I think when they looked at Seattle's given roster, NECA, SDS, Jewel, I think they're like, hey, we're not that many pieces away. Let's add some shooting. Let's run this back. It's not time to get a new voice in here and try to revamp this system, revamp this team a year before the new CBA. I do think this is her last year. I think Noelle Quinn will have to make a very competitive run in the semifinals, I think, to retain the job. I don't see that happening, but it is early. We'll wait and see what the free agency looks like. But yeah, it's been the wild, wild west, and that is a perfect kind of entry point to the final thoughts on today's podcast, which are basically what we've been seeing here since Curt Miller got fired is what happens when there's an influx of cash, that come into the league. And the league is more popular than it's ever been. There's more investment than it's ever been. There's more eyeballs, engagement. And now the people in charge, the owners and the front offices, but mainly the owners, they're saying, hey, there is a lot of money to be made in the future. Instead of trying to scrape by and make that playoff run in that 6, 7, 8 position, let's clean house. Let's strip this baby to the studs and let's start building assets. Let's start building a future for that 2025 draft, for that 2026 draft, and specifically for that 2027 Juju Watkins draft. Because that draft, I've said it many times, that's going to be, quote me now, the best draft the WNBA has ever seen. And so I think a lot of front offices know this, and they probably are like, okay, we're getting 3 new expansion teams. There's going to be a lot of turnover. There's going to be a lot of player movement with the new CBA. It wouldn't be the worst thing to stockpile a whole mess of assets for 26, for 27, for 28. And I think that's what we're seeing. And I can't say that that's a bad strategy in the new WNBA, but I also think you should be aware that this is what it's going to look like. It's not going to look like the old WNBA where, a coach is going to get 4 or 5 years to try to build a team. That's not going to happen anymore. People are too invested. There's too much money. And also too, just remember, when you have such a condensed talent pool, so when you draft Cameron Brink and Rickea Jackson and possibly Paige Beckers, you got 3 years max. You have 3 years max to do something with them. Because not only do you have to make sure they're happy, you have to retain them. And that's the business model. So you're going to see a lot of stuff over the next 5 to 10 years. And obviously there'll be ebbs and flows with all that stuff, but it's going to be a much more cutthroat WNBA, especially when we're talking about front offices. So leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you think is top of line of all the coaching candidates available, who gets who goes where. This is just bonkers. This is so much fun. I can't wait to see what happens November 17th also with those ping pong balls. As always, thank you for the support. Like, share, and hey, hit that subscribe button. It's free.